Al Ewing and Stefano Caselli save the Red Planet as Storm finds herself doubting what her rule of Arakko has become, while Abigail Brand makes moves to install her own version of the X-Men on the planet. Al Ewing continues off his amazing sword run, albeit with a new title, as he begins to flesh out Arakko's culture even more and set up some new and returning teams on the Red Planet. As someone who read all of his sword run, this book really rewarded me as we pick up pretty much where that final issue left off, with Storm still coming to terms with her being the ruler of Arakko and one who is struggling with what her rule will be. I love Ewing is playing with the idea of power corrupting her, and we've seen how that plays out with Krakoa and how Xavier is running everything down there, and how Storm doesn't really want to do that and she wants to do things differently, but she's still falling into those same old routines. It feeds really nicely into Abigail Brand's storyline, which when we last saw her, she began working for Orchis against the mutants, so her wanting to set up her own mutant team to combat the mutants and kind of usurp Storm's rule a little bit is fantastic, since she is using her enemy to fight themselves. Ewing also oversaw the return of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but not as an evil mutant cabal this time, but as a force to combat Brand, so they themselves are becoming the proper X-Men of the Red Planet, which is really quite cool. Ewing has a fantastic handle on all of these characters, being that he did the sword run with most of them, and I love the espionage, backstabbing, and Game of Thrones-esque drama is continuing under his pen here. Stefano Caselli joins the book as artist with a fantastic style that actually matches the previous Sword book's art from Jacopo Camungi really well. Caselli's character designs were fantastic, as everyone almost got like a new costume pretty much, with Storm getting a really cool punky new outfit fitting for the leader of the new Brotherhood. X-Men Red Issue 1 was a fantastic continuation of Ewing's Sword book, continuing his long-running plots from that book to deliver a cool new take on some established X teams, as well as new status quo shifts for Storm and Abigail Brand. I'm going to give this issue a 10 out of 10. X-Men Red Issue 1 finds Storm defending herself against the shapeshifter queen of Arakko, who takes on Aurora's image as she tries to stab the mutant. Aurora knows this being isn't her, since if it were, she would already be dead. Storm frees herself from the mutant's grip as the queen proclaims that she is the shapeshifter Omega and she is Aurora in her prime, firing lightning at Storm, saying how the hero is tainted by the world and seduced by the power and the crowns and the thrones. The shapeshifter knows that Storm was never there on the battlefield, but Storm says that she was fighting battles she knew nothing of and living a past she stole the wrong face from. Storm knows that if the shapeshifter regent has youth she has experience, trapping the villain in ice and demanding that she yield and step down from her seat. The shapeshifter refuses, knowing that Arakko is not Storm's and she will know the cost. She strikes herself with lightning as Storm is shook from her memory by Iska, who wonders if the future will be war or peace, knowing they either return to Amenth and destroy the ancient enemies or begin things anew. She knows the responsibility of this will fall solely to Queen Storm's hands, but Storm reminds her that she's regent, not a queen, and they will decide together as a council, but Iska continues to mock Storm's title, wondering if the voice of Soul's throne is comfortable and if this is what she wanted for Arakko. In the present, Magneto arrives on Arakko, asking a nearby fisherman if this land belongs to him. The fisherman knows that the land is everyone's and he's just walking on it, wondering if Magneto has a problem with that. Magneto introduces himself, quick to correct himself and say that his name is Max, telling the man that he was hoping on building a home on the secluded island. The man knows he can do that as long as he keeps an open door, but the island never sees many people besides him. Magneto finds that good as the man asks if Max wants to talk about why he's hiding out there, but Magneto thought Arakko would frown upon weaknesses. The fisherman knows that the Krakoans think a lot about the Arakko, and it seems they know so little, but speaking pain is not weak, since how can one be strong if they won't heal what's broken? Magneto doesn't think that there is a lot to say, but then regales the man with how he tried to build something great in order to balance out all he has lived through, but when he tried to wrestle it down and make it real, it broke apart and people saw him as a monster and a fool and a failure. He knows there's nothing more to say, and what the fisherman sees is the latest great work he has embarked on. Magneto creates a towering metal castle called the Autumn Palace, knowing that it's a comfortable grave for him to die in. A Like poor Prometheus, Roberto da Costa drowns away his problems at his bar, the Red Lagoon, knowing that he needs to make Mars a party palace, and the bar is a good start. Kobach says that he's never danced to the so-called disco that Roberto was talking about, regaling the mutant with how he was born during the final siege and his first love Tario was killed in the prisons, but before that, they both fought against Vile, but Tario took the villain on himself, leaving Kobach to weep for a year. Roberto remembers his first love Juliana, who died saving his life as well. The two toast to the business of living as Vulcan begins making a scene at the entrance with a Shi'ar who reminds him of his diplomatic immunity they have while at the port. Vulcan says that he led the Shi'ar Empire to true greatness and never died, hearing now that Gladiator usurped his throne and has given the role to Xandro Xavier, but it was never his title to give. Vulcan revels in the Shi'ar begging for his life as Roberto tries to calm Vulcan down, powering up as Vulcan knows that he's the one who owns the Red Lagoon. Roberto doesn't like the mutant threatening his customers since the customer is always king to him. Vulcan knows all about Sunspot's powers, knowing that he has to take the power from the sun to power up, but Vulcan doesn't need to do that when he can just take Roberto's power. Vulcan attacks the depowered Roberto, punching him in the face as Kobach shows his disgust at the idea of Vulcan being a weapon thief who can't fight a fair fight. The Shi'ar ask him to help Roberto, but Kobach knows that that's not how they do things on Arakko. Vulcan continues to gloat over Roberto, proclaiming himself a king and part of the Summers family, who are Krakoan royalty. Thunderbird suddenly grabs Vulcan, asking if he knows Cyclops, so Vulcan says that Cyclops is his brother as Thunderbolt smashes him in the face, asking Vulcan to tell his brother to go fuck himself. Thunderbolt smashes him on the head with a bench for daring to call himself Krakoan royalty. The Arakko boo the mutant for helping one another as Abigail Brand and Cable arrive, calling off the fight as Brand says that she is making this her business, being that she is Sword Commander. Vulcan continues to rant about becoming a son, but Cable uses his telepathy on his uncle to shut him up. He knows that Gabe is getting worse, and with all of the Shi'ar in town, it's not helping, knowing that he's not welcome at the summer house, but maybe Scott can get through to him. Brand wants him taken to Sword Station 2 though, thinking that she can work with him, but Thunderbolt isn't happy with her offering him a job after what he just did. Cable knows they would have resolved the situation peacefully without damage, demanding the mutant watch his temper. Thunderbolt gets in Cable's face, threatening Cable, but Nathan knows that he could learn a thing or two from his brother, causing Thunderbird to tell him that Frost, Xavier, and everyone can go fuck themselves, knowing that he never would have let them turn his brother into a soldier if he had been there, but Cable knows he wasn't since he had better things to do. Brand stops the arguing, leaving with Vulcan and Cable, but not before telling Thunderbird to go back to Earth since she is rescinding his Martian privileges. Roberto, however, is glad Thunderbird was there, knowing that he will always have a place with him as Thunderbird knows he'll be back since Cable made it personal this time. He tells Roberto to watch his back though, since there is a rot on the planet, something Sunspot knows all about. At the Great Ring, a council meeting finishes up with Iska asking Storm if this is the paradise she foresaw. Storm knows that if a battle is what Iska wants, then Red Root still waits rescuing in Otherworld. Iska knows that Red Root made her bed and she must free herself in accordance to the law of Genesis. Iska knows that Red Root understands strength and that she should have gone with her to Otherworld. Storm knows that her abstention allowed her to decide the issue by Arakko law, just like how Iska abstained from their vote to move Arakko to Mars. Iska reminds her that her power is that she never loses, and had she voted, vote would have always gone in her way and she prefers to keep it neutral, wanting Aurora to shoulder the responsibility since after all she is regent and this is her planet, and they are just the people who live there. Storm remembers the shapeshifter's words to her as Brand appears, wanting to talk with the regent. Brand tries to say that Krakoa colonized Mars, but Storm stops her, knowing that Krakoa only resurrected it. Brand knows that doing so was the solution to the problem that was the violent island of Arakko, but Storm doesn't think that there are a few roaming bandits that represent the entire society. Brand, however, knows that the head of the Great Ring is quoted on file saying that the bandits with high-level mutant powers are a danger, and Krakoa should have conquered Earth. Storm knows that Iska was the one who talked, knowing that she fought against Arakko, so why is she suddenly treated as the voice of the people soul of Arakko. Brand wonders why Storm is the voice of soul as well, knowing Arakko needs a controlling influence and the X-Men can do it. She explains that they can be cultural ambassadors who set a good example, since that's what the X-Men have always been, proposing an X-Men of Mars team with Storm leading them. Storm isn't interested, telling Brand wants her to find someone, but Brand wants her to think it over since she is already doing the job and she is already taking power and imposing her will, things a queen does. Storm leaves, knowing that how can that be all Brand sees in her, wondering if that is all that is left in her. The shapeshifter's ghost knows that she was seduced by power and the crowns and the thrones, but Storm knows that she wasn't, wanting to be free from the cage along with the planet. She blows up her throne with lightning, proclaiming that there is to be no thrones on Arakko. The next day, the fisherman and Magneto look over the Autumn Palace, with Max assuring his new friend that he'll work on the decorations in due time, thinking they could make it a challenge to see who could make the softest furnishings. The fisherman likes the open door that Max has put on, as he realizes that he never learned the man's name. Bing says that his real name is long forgotten, but most call him the Fisher King, prompting Max to ask what his power is, but the king reveals that he never actually had one, and he's not human, he was born in the prisons, making him more Arakko than most. Max wants to know how he lives among the Arakko without powers, but Fisher King knows that the powers don't make the Arakko, and he was born in the prisons and took Vile's torture, while his daughter took Vile's bribes and offers. He knows Max was somewhere similar, but Max doesn't want to talk about it as Roberto arrives, revealing to Eric that he has eyes and ears all over the planet, so he knew Magneto had arrived. Magneto tells him to tuck his shirt in, noticing that he's been fighting, but Roberto instead says that he's got a proposition for Magneto. The Fisher King is confused by how many names Max has, as the mutant says that he doesn't want whatever Roberto is offering and he's done building utopias. Roberto thinks that's perfect since Abigail Brand is up to something and she has a plan for Arakko, but Fisher King knows that she wants Arakko to have no say in the future, having seen that before from people. Roberto knows to combat this, Mars needs X-Men, wondering if the two are in. Storm soon arrives, saying that she was coming to suggest something similar to Magneto, but knows this isn't Mars, it's Arakko, and to defend it, they will need to be of Arakko, and if Brand wants X-Men, she will find them, so Arakko needs to balance that out. Magneto wants to know who will defend the broken land, so Storm reveals the Brotherhood will fight for Arakko.